Larry, it's great to have you. We're thrilled you're here.
Thank
I'm
you.
very thrilled. Um, I have my whole script, but I'm gonna just forget about that. I want to start with something that I was talking to Diane about, which is I've seen this piece many, many, many times, um, and I find it inexhaustible. I never feel bored when I'm watching this piece, and I never feel like I'm seeing the same thing over and over again. And I would love to know if you could help me figure out why that is.
Yeah, I think Megalopolis is really special as a performance because it really features the dancers, and it is something that I think the dancers live in, and live exuberantly in. The dance was created at Juilliard for a junior class, and a couple of years ago, and they. One of the dancers came in one day. I was thinking I was making a 16-minute work to Steve Reich.
Yeah.
And then one of the dancers said, "Oh, Larry, why don't you just put MIA on?" And it sped everything up, and it gave it an edge. And it was that edge that I think keeps it really fresh. And it was by sheer luck. It was by suggestion of one of the dancers and me trusting it. And I think that's what gives it a lot of life.
But I know that the MIA was. Is it okay for me to say that it was kind of random? It wasn't planned at the beginning that you were going to do it
Oh
that
God,
way?
yeah, it was
No.
totally
So
random.
this is why I went back and was looking at some other interviews you've done, and I was struck by the fact that it seems like the more challenge and restriction and blocking, or just the rules that you're up against, the more relaxed you get as a choreographer. You often talk about how I'm glad I have this rule or that rule because it makes me feel like I have more freedom. How is there like a correlation between how hard things are and how you feel more integrated when you're doing something?
Yeah, I mean, to me, rules are just a guideline. And so there's more breathing room. If I have blinders on, I can live within the guidelines.
The more you're challenged and the more the rules are set up, the more relaxed you seem to get in the
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
the more that I
Okay.
notice you call for that among the dancers. You want them to be attentive, but you want them to be relaxed.
Yeah, I think that there should always be breathing room for expression and instant expression. When I go into the studio every day, I sort of drop all the rules. I say, "Oh, I thought I was making this dance," but someone makes a suggestion, and you have to leave the window of opportunity open.
Yeah.
And to leave that window of opportunity open, you also have to practice detachment.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say, maybe I'm not choreographing to this piece of music. You have to give in to the fact that the music can change a week before the show, or because you have to do what's right for the progression of the creative process, not for what's right in your head.
So is that why another thing I notice is you make a big point about bringing the dancers in to the process, and a lot of the students in my class have talked with me about your method that they've learned, that you put people off in different corners and tell them to work on something and then come back, and then you say that you're like the editor or you do the fixing. But how do you manage to maintain your own style? Because you seem to be so quintessential. You do have a style, but you're so open to everybody else. How do you do that?
Well,
how
I
do
think
you accomplish that?
Yeah, I think each dance has its own style, and the style suits the world that we're creating. And so I'm constantly editing to suit that world, the world in which the dance lives, right? But just because everybody's creating doesn't mean everything's going to be picked. And so what gets picked is where the style is. It's completely in that editing process of saying, "Oh, I like this moment," or "I like this," because that's the world in which it lives in. And so, Yeah, I think the studio is very playful, but it is also, again, another place for dancers and choreographer to act with detachment, because we're going to just generate, but 75% of that will never make it in. So what might be a dancer's favorite move might not be the style of the dance.
But you wouldn't want to say that you legislate or you're not dictating to people. You want to find out what they have within, and you want to see how it looks to you, and then you make an intuitive decision about that. Is it that of the moment?
And actually, sometimes I don't even know what I'm looking for. What I'm really looking for is the hook of the dance. Like, oh, this was a hook for me. I saw this in generating movement. You know, I had no clue what I was making. I was just generating, and I'm constantly just waiting for something to resonate and to go home and have my aha moment. And
so it could happen after the fact.
oh yeah, I usually don't go into the studio thinking I'm going to make a piece about ant colonies. I usually just go into the studio to generate vocabulary.
Yeah, we talked about that
to
too.
play and to just dance and put any music on that sort of is a drive to dance, a motor. But so how Megalopolis in particular came about was I just saw the dancers as ants.
Yes, I know.
And then I went down the Wikipedia, Google search, and one thing led to the next, and I saw, oh my God, isn't this cool? This underground ant colony called Megalopolis. It's like the largest ant colony, and they're all in diagonal tunnels, and how cooperative they are in constructing their city. And that's what I saw in this class of dancers, like how cooperative they were being. And
that's a very important thing to you, I noticed. Like
Yeah.
if I may say, like a through line in all the works I've watched and all the interviews I've watched that you've done, you seem very genuinely, deeply committed to that. But I find that so intriguing, because you quoted Martha Graham, and she had a very sort of, she used the bodies that she had, but she basically had a sort of top-down, she had a much more managerial, autocratic way of doing things than you do. So what is it that you pulled from Martha Graham that you feel is of value to your type of work?
oh, you know what? I actually really like similarities in process or in aesthetic. I really like her early work that is design and architectural. I lose it.
I know you just did a Lamentation variation.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Or earlier than that, you're talking about.
What's
Earlier
that?
than
Earlier, yeah. I don't even know the names of all the dances,
Like
but I remember.
Heretic or something
Yeah,
like that.
I remember seeing something at NYU, and it was just pure design. I actually don't follow the narrative work or the mythological work. I don't. That doesn't speak to me. As soon as it gets character, I like the design.
Yes, I agree.
And architecture and simplicity, and so there's some work of hers that is so simplistic. I mean, just structurally architectural. What's the one, Streets?
Yeah, Steps in the Street.
Steps in the Streets
We did
is
that
just
here.
stunning,
we did that here.
right?
Yeah, it's
And I'm
very, very, very structural.
Yeah, structural.
But see, I noticed a lot. This is just a side note. I mean, I noticed a lot of Graham idiom in some of the steps that people were doing here today. I really feel that there's a certain processional thing that's going on. There's a certain the way they come in and out with a long line of people. It seems like it's going to go on forever. That's very, very much like when I saw this piece in the auditorium and their wings were there. I thought, my God, are there 50 people in this dance?
Yeah.
Because you create the sense that they're just going to keep on coming forever.
And that's the army. That's the ant army,
I
right?
see,
Because
yes,
the
the
army
ant
you never see the end of an ant line.
No.
Which is cool. And also that came about because of, everything really has to do with where I'm creating work,
You mean
with whom I'm
physically?
physically what the room feels like, who I'm creating it with, how many I'm creating it with. And so when I made this at Juilliard, I think it was 24 dancers, and I thought, oh my God, there's so many of them. Do I try to make it look like there's less or more, or just 26? And so I was interested in making it look like more than 26.
And
You know?
I think you definitely did do that.
Yeah, and
even in this room where I can see people where they're waiting to come on and go off, I find myself sometimes counting the numbers of people.
Yeah.
You know, like, wait a second, where did they come from?
I do the same thing when I'm watching. I actually only, if I go to a Broadway show or ballet or any sort of theater piece, I'm watching the ensemble more than I'm watching the principals or the lead. I'm curious about the ensemble a lot.
Yeah.
So I think I work well with ensembles, large ensembles.
Do you think, I want to just go back
Yeah.
to a little earlier in your career, and I told my students I was going to talk to you about this, and now I'm not sure if it's the right way to ask the question, but if I were to say, where do you get your ideas? Just if I were to ask you that, would you simply say that they are situational, as you say, they're relative to where you are and where you physically are and mentally, etc., emotionally, or were there any earlier? I noticed this guy Mark Dendy was important to you. Was he someone who planted some kind of seed in terms of your aesthetic or ideas, or was it before that?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I pulled a lot from Mark. I was his assistant and associate.
Yeah,
So yeah, I definitely got a lot of vocabulary and sort of animalistic things from him. But he also nurtured me. He one day said, "I think you should make a solo too."
the mattress thing.
Yeah, really the seed to that what began in a solo, "Ain't No Sunshine" by Bill Withers. We were in a tech rehearsal, and the tech crew was playing their own music, and that song came on. He suggested Larry, make a solo to this. So I did, and then he put it on his program, and that was kind of like he gave me the gift to present my choreography. And then one thing led to the next. But I'm also very interested in generations of modern dance. And just recently I've been thinking, like, it's so young. I mean, if you consider Martha Graham as like one of the pillars or founders, I know there are people before Martha Graham in American modern dance, but what would you say? She's second generation?
I would say that she's the one that made it the American idiom. She is the one that made it American. She stayed here. She didn't train in Europe. She didn't try to imitate the European style. When Mary Vigmont came here, she met her at a reception and that was it. She didn't like hang out with her or anything. So yeah, that's where I put her in terms of the commitment to being here, like you were saying.
So, and you know, so this is very young.
Yeah,
so
it is
Mark
very
Dendy,
young.
who I studied and worked with, studied with Martha Graham. So that makes me only like third generation away. Really, it's not a long, it doesn't have that much history.
So do you remember, I know you also worked for MTV. What was it that you did?
Club MTV.
Yes, Club MTV, which we won't dredge up.
No, to me, that just makes for an intriguing bio.
Okay. So, but when do you think you got the spark? I love to find out.
Oh my God.
Were you like a little kid and you went to? I have no idea.
Oh no, I started making gymnastics routines on the front lawn of my house and would perform for passing cars. At like 7.
And what kind of reaction did you get?
You know, I would do like a whole like tumbling pass, which consisted of a cartwheel, and maybe a round off. And I'd finish it and be like, did anyone see? You know, so I was always performing, and it was the vocabulary that changed. You know, it was gymnastics, and not very good, never competitively, and then it was musical theater, because that's what high school introduced me to, and then it was recital school in a Dolly Dinkle school, and then it was, I could study dance in college? Wow, that's an option, I didn't know. And then I went to college and I became a modern dancer.
Another thing you said in terms of that trajectory, which I also like very much, is about, in the end, it's all dance. You talk about how there's all these different categories, there's all these different styles. I've seen some things you did with, I guess it was the New York City Ballet or Tyler Peck, things of that nature, which are very much more classically looking. But I like the fact that you don't really, in your mind, discriminate in that way. Do you?
No, I mean, I think, in a way, it was, I have to think of it in a way, just to get over the nervousness and the intimidation factor of walking to a ballet studio, of which it's not my strong suit, and being with 4 principal dancers of City Ballet and thinking, I don't even know what the terminology is. You know, so I to get myself over that hurdle, I think I'm just making a dance. I'm not making a ballet. I'm not making a Broadway show. I'm making a dance with dancers.
That was what was so great about, who was it who came here and set the fashion piece 2 years ago? Jackie. Jackie talks about, what's her last name?
Jacqueline Walsh.
Jackie talked about the effect it had on her. Very similar to what you just said, that she was going to be partnering with a big shot ballet dancer.
Yeah.
But she had the same sort of reconciliation to it being, you're in the same space, if you will.
And everybody has their strong suit. Like even in ballet, someone might be really great at petit allegro or adagio, whatever it is, they all have their strong suit. But I think the kind of the aha hook moment for me when I was working with 6 Keigwin and Company modern dancers and I think 4 New York City principal dancers, I mixed the partnering up. I gave a creative assignment, and so I stuck 1 modern dancer with 1 ballet dancer, and we made duets. Actually, the dancers made the duets, and that was to me the hook, because that's where the exchange happened. The ballet dancers got to play and explore movement in ways they hadn't, and the modern dancers were challenged to bring their virtuosic technique up. And so I don't know. That's the gem of that dance, titled Canvas. That's where it came.
So just to round this off, and then because I want to leave time for the students to speak to you. I read this, I thought this was appropriate. I read this interview with Karl Lagerfeld in the Times the other day, and the interviewer was trying to get him to talk about his past and his history, and he said, well, everything just goes in the garbage. It's only about now and today and tomorrow in terms of fashion, which I do think is very relevant to what you're doing. Do you ever think about where you think your art should be going? Like, do you have a 5-year plan, or is that not relevant to you, Larry Keigwin? I mean, you are someone who has incumbent expectations on you now from the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do. My company has a strategic plan that goes out maybe 3 years. Personally, I have no plan. And I've been actually kind of resentful of it recently. I'm like,
of which?
Why does my company have a plan, 5-year or 3-year plan, and I don't have a personal plan? So I'm curious about that.
That's you.
Yeah.
I mean, are you serious? You don't really mean you're seriously resentful, because that's...
I'm not. I'm not resentful, but I'm like a little. I was jealous of my own company because they had a plan and I didn't have a person. I mean, when I say personal plan, I mean like personal life stuff. Like, where do I want to be living in 5 years? Where do I want to be?
I meant aesthetically. It seems like your plan shouldn't be like that. It should be like what you said. It should be whatever comes into your consciousness on a day-to-day basis. You seem to trust that very well, and it's created a whole corpus of work for you. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just as I excavate movement and personalities from the dancers, I'm just doing that in my own life. I'm still digging and being like, what's next? What's next? And some opportunity comes knocking, and some I have to go asking. So it's really just about maintaining and I don't know, trusting that work will come and that I will find inspiration to work. Inspiration
is the theme of our season this year. So I think we should applaud Larry and thank him.